if you just search for food tea or food trainer, then it should bring up our app as well.
Oh, fast. Okay, so food tea, food trainer, app store, and or over at Apple as well.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I've got it on my phone and I've been playing around. It's well designed. It's a quick learn. It's simple, which is great for on the go living, especially if you've got kids. And so that's awesome. And Mark, can you tell us? I know you have an app it's called Restrain, I believe. Can you tell us about that and tell us what's?
Yeah, so Restrain's similar to Natalia's in a way. We use similar games. In Restrain, we have a few more games which trains similar sort of thought processes which underlie eating behaviour. It's called Restrain. If you type it in, it's only available on Android, unfortunately. But if you type it into Google Play, just Restrain, or type in Cardiff University Restrain into Google, and you can get all the information and be able to follow the link through to there.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so for anyone out there, you've got those two options. You've got the food trainer and food tea, and you've got the Restrain app, and which is over on Android. So that's awesome. So, my first question I wanted to throw out there is who was the ideal person this would be, you think, recommended for?
So it's mostly for people who may struggle with certain eating behaviors. Let's say if you overeat too many snacks, or you find it hard to resist chocolate food or sweets, that kind of thing. It's probably well designed for that type of person, because both apps sort of it targets the thought processes which guide us towards the unhealthy foods, really, and away from the healthy food. So it's for people who struggle with let's say binge eating or snacking too much, or eating the wrong foods, let's say.
Right. Okay. So pretty much most of us out there have one of the terms I like to use with my coaching is to know it's a take on the old idea, know yourself and know your kryptonite. And so I always share with people myself, I find Doritos are irresistible for me. So if I have a big bag of Doritos and people say, oh yeah, you're a fitness coach and you're a nutrition coach, you must be perfect. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a human and I have these cravings too for that. And that's what can set me off. But so for me, that's knowing that, and especially with very cold beer on a hot day. So that's like the perfect storm, and I could go through, probably a 2-pound bag of Doritos, and then I would be just a wreck the rest of the day. But that's awesome. So Natalia, how about you? What would the food tea app be similar to, I guess, for the same type of person or situation that Mark had mentioned?
I think we may have lost her.
We may have lost Natalia. I think let me see let's see, we got 2 participants. No, it was just you and I. Yeah, she must have gotten disconnected. She'll probably pop back on here in a minute, which is, we'll just continue on here. Let's talk a little bit more about the Restrain app. So when did you start working on this?
So myself, only coming up to about a year ago now. So the app itself's been in development for about 4 years, I think. But yeah, I started as of February, basically. And my role is to help with so I'm a research assistant. It's helped with the day-to-day running of the trial. So it's the promotion and making sure that people don't experience any problems with the app, and guide people through it if they have any questions. So
yeah, and how many people approximately have come to or are in the trial so far?
At the moment, we're in the thousands, about 3,000-4,000,
wow.
Which is brilliant. Yeah, it's one of the largest. Yeah, one of the largest sort of research attempts I've been part of. So yeah, it's tremendous, really. But we're still looking for more. We're looking for roughly about 45 to 50,000, ideally.
Right.
So yeah, the more the merrier, really. It's a 12-week project as well. So you engage in the app for 12 weeks, basically. We're looking for as many people as possible, really.
Oh, that's awesome. So if anyone out there is at all interested in this, there you've got it. I mean, this is and this is there's no charge to this, right? I mean, obviously this is free of charge, but just because it's free, it doesn't mean it's not valuable. I mean, there's a tremendous, as Mark was saying, they've got a few years of work already into this, and so it could be very valuable. I think we've got Natalia back, and so Natalia, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
No problem.
Just moved rooms.
It might happen. I know it happens. Sometimes it happens to me too when we get bumped off our connections or whatever. And right now, being Monday morning here, it's in Europe. There's probably millions of Zoom calls going on. There's a lot of bandwidth is occupied. So Natalia, if we're circling back to the Food Tea app, I wonder if you've got any. Do you have any stories you could tell us about anyone that might have used it and benefited from it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you go to, I think we've had more users using the Android one because we developed that first. So if you go on Google Play, you can see there's hundreds of reviews now of people that have used it. And, some people are really, really positive about it. They say it just got rid of all their cravings for certain foods. So it's interesting because we think it works through more kind of unconscious mechanisms through associative learning. So it's almost like just by playing the game, you can be thinking about other stuff, just mindlessly playing it. You're programming your brain to go for healthy foods all the time and to stop and inhibit and not respond to the unhealthy foods that you're trying to avoid. And just by repeatedly doing that for a few minutes every day, that's kind of really getting into your unconscious. So it's almost like you would react differently to the foods in everyday life without even really thinking about it or trying to. So we've had lots of fascinating stories of people saying things like, oh, I carried my favorite chocolate bar around with me all week in my bag, but when I actually went to get it and picked it up, I just found I didn't feel like it anymore. Or one woman said that at work, people are always bringing in cakes and biscuits, and normally she just can't resist them. She can't walk past the kitchen without picking up a biscuit. And then she's like, I don't know what happened, but now they may as well be paper clips for me. So it's really fascinating. So
that's a powerful story.
Yeah, so there's quite a few people who report this kind of effect of like, oh, it's like the food's just lost all its power over me. I can just take it or leave it now. And which is nice because then they feel more in control. They can still enjoy these things occasionally if they want to, but they don't feel like it's, out of their control. But of course, that's not true for everyone. So some people play it and then they're like, oh, I don't think it's really had any impact on me, or, it's not really for me about not being able to resist certain foods. It's more about portion size, or there's other aspects of why I find it hard to lose weight that are not really targeted by your app. So I would just say, we don't really know. Some of us are driven by this food cue reactivity, by, certain foods being very tempting and us finding it hard to control our responses to those. And that may be genetic and innate. You don't really know. You might have a hunch that you're that kind of person, but I guess it's worth a few minutes just to try out these kind of games, this approach, to see if it helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's fascinating that it's, I was thinking, it's more the learning the behavior of like stopping, pausing, which has some probably helpful on one side, but if you can, so you're suggesting that it has, basically an unconscious learning benefit for some people. So
that's why it's different to traditional kind of dieting or self-control approaches, which are very much about, you setting deliberate goals and planning and thinking about it. And, it's quite effortful to try and resist something consciously, right? This is kind of trying to help you by just making it almost automatic.
Right, right, and that would suggest to me that I can see the benefit of not having to go into like the limited willpower that we all have, and so wow, if you get that benefit. I had a friend. This brings to mind an idea that someone suggested to me years ago that actually and that is with, for example, for someone who loves wine. I'm a wine lover myself. So what they suggested was, instead of having like just taking a piece of tape and writing that you could write on, and instead of writing wine where the wine cabinet is, you write ethanol. And so you put that on. So I did that. So I just put ethanol on my wine in big ugly letters. And so now when I walk by the wine cabinet, and especially during the week when I have decided I'm not going to have any wine during the week, it's only going to be on weekends. And so I see ethanol, and so I've seen it now hundreds of times. And so I guess that somehow I'm just not as interested in like having, honey, why don't we crack open a bottle of ethanol? And it just makes me think of what actually is of a different perspective of the same thing.
Well, I think that's kind of what you're talking about is something we often call evaluative conditioning, where you change how you evaluate a substance, right? So instead of it being something really positive and tempting, you look at it in a different way, or you give it a different meaning, and then it becomes something that's not as appealing anymore. And I mean, I know that's also, I think, part of the RESTRAIN app, and we've been playing around with that as well. But in terms of alcohol, I didn't drink for about 18 months. I did like dry January, and I just didn't drink at all. And it was really interesting because I used to love red wine. And if I saw, a bottle or glass of red wine, I was like, oh, I really want to drink some.
Right.
But after not drinking for that long, I saw it instead as a toxin. And then I would see a glass of red wine and I would just see it as this kind of poison. I completely changed how I saw it. I have gone back to drinking a bit now, but not as much as I did before. So I think your evaluations of these things can be shaped. They're kind of plastic, and how you do that, I mean, you can use various strategies, I guess, but at least that's a positive thing. You're not kind of obliged to be stuck with this, difficult craving your whole life.
Right. Yeah, that's a fascinating term. I didn't realize there was that term existed. And Mark, is that Natalia mentioned that was something that with the RESTRAIN app is that also an aspect of it?
Yes. So in RESTRAIN, we're trialing out multiple different games. So you've tried Food Tea, which is one of the games. Like you said, it's training the kind of stop response, the inhibit response kind of thing. We're trialing a few more. We're trialing that and a few more in RESTRAIN, including the sort of evaluative conditioning one, among others. So the ones that we've been speaking about so often up to now has been all the sort of unconscious, like we've spoken about the unconscious kind of drives. There's also the kind of goal-directed aspect as well. So we train people to, really think about their goals in certain ways and to put their goals at the forefront of their heads. And, it's keeping that capacity to keep that goal in mind in the face of temptations and all that kind of thing. So within RESTRAIN, we're testing multiple different approaches, really, both unconscious and conscious, let's say.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So you got so would one person, if they go to the RESTRAIN app, would you find that people use multiple approaches, or do people tend to maybe test it out and then choose and then probably fall into one, or any?
So the way that the study's been set up is it's you'll only test one or two of the games as you sign up. That's just sort of study design, unfortunately. So these will be sort of compared against each other, but all the games included in RESTRAIN have theoretical reasons to believe that it will help with weight loss, or will help with changing your healthy eating behaviour, or your unhealthy eating behaviour. We're just seeing which is the most effective and how do these work, what's the underlying sort of mechanisms, the processes by which these influence behavior, let's say.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. This brings to mind there's a program online that's also developed by a psychologist. His name is Dr. Glenn Livingston, and actually I met Glenn at a conference years ago, and I had no idea he was a marketing. He was a marketing guy initially. He was consumer psychology and that kind of stuff, and worked with a lot of the big food corporations, or a lot of big corporations, including, I think, food folks. And as it turns out, he was struggling himself with binge eating, and he eventually, came to terms with that and decided to work on that, helping people with that problem while he was helping himself. And he created and you can find him. He's got a program called Never Binge Again. And I happened to listen to one of his podcasts over the weekend, and it's really fascinating because he talks about some of these exact same things. So you might even reach out to Dr. Glenn. And he's got a lot of folks that are in his program apparently, and who knows, it might be a match made in heaven. So
yeah, I mean, we've just been doing some small trials of food tea in people with binge eating disorder and bulimia nervosa, because we kind of think of everyday trouble resisting foods and maybe grazing or snacking throughout the day, but of course there are people that will sometimes eat very large quantities of energy dense food in a binge, and sometimes that reaches kind of full-blown clinical diagnosis. Sometimes it's not as severe. So I mean, it's some binging is fairly common in the population, and it's often not treated very well. So if you've got a kind of binge eating disorder in the UK, you probably will be not priority to be seen by doctors and hospitals, because of course anorexia tends to get a lot of the resource because of the increased mortality risk. So we're really hoping that these kind of approaches that help give people back a bit of self-control towards their food can help people with binge eating as well, and particularly this is something they can do themselves when they're on a waiting list, or in addition to psychological treatment like CBT. And so we've done a few small studies now, and they are giving some promising results. So we're finding that people with binge eating and bulimia do show some reduction in their binge frequency and in their eating disorder scores more generally. So this is kind of other symptoms and thoughts related to eating disorders. And they also show a reduction in how much they value these high energy dense foods, including the ones that they personally binge on. So at the start of the study, they would give them really high ratings out of 100 for how much they like and want to eat these foods. And then at the end, that would go down kind of by about 10 points out of 100 on average.
Wow.
It's not a huge drop. It's not like you go from loving chocolate to hating it, but it is a significant drop. And of course, that average, some people might reduce by more and some people by less. And so we think that maybe just by making these foods a bit less appealing, that helps people to binge less frequently, or when they do start binging, maybe to eat less of them.
Yes. Yeah, that's fascinating. This is on a related note. Let me see if I've got it handy. No, it's not handy. But I was going to show you. I often use a continuous glucose monitor, and it's something that I've suggested to a number of clients. And just having the reason is it gives you that feedback. You can see, okay, if I eat the bag of or if I eat 10 chocolate chip cookies. Wow, I can see the spike in glucose, within 30 to 60 minutes. And then I can also correlate that with, my feeling of energy and well-being and focus and that kind of stuff. And I can see it goes up and down. And just that bit of feedback for some people, I find different things work for different people. I imagine, which has been helpful. Is that something have you ever looked at anything related to getting with glucose monitoring? And
no, not yet. I mean, it's we have thought about, can we use kind of passive monitors that people might wear, to look at these things in everyday life while they're using our app, for example. But I think it's a really good point you bring up, because there is, there's a model now of binge eating that is linked to sort of food addiction, and it says that these big swings in blood glucose, that these highly hedonic foods, these highly processed foods with lots of fat and sugar, and I mean they're producing swings in blood glucose that are kind of not natural, because all the foods that we naturally evolved to eat wouldn't produce these physiological changes. And they also cause big changes in brain dopamine, for example, and opioid release,
serotonin.
Yeah, all these neurochemicals. And so they're saying that, especially if you kind of really over restrict your eating for a while, if you fast and then you have these really highly rewarding foods, it's like you're going to have a massive change in blood glucose, massive change in brain chemistry. And that kind of almost turns these foods almost into like an addictive drug, just because of the huge impact it's having. And you could sort of learn through repeated eating, you know, binging or eating these foods in big quantities, then you can kind of set up this almost habit, this kind of compulsive response to, I don't know, feeling down or whatever it is that triggered that behavior, boredom. So it's, I think you're right to kind of look at that blood glucose angle and to say to people, really, we should be trying to eat more of the foods that don't cause these big swings.
Yeah, there's a I just know a lot of these people I've learned from, but there's a doctor in New York who was himself obese, and he has a very long name, and but he goes, his online name is Dr. Tro, Tro. Someone else you might want to connect with, but he has his own program of helping people with weight loss and health problems, and I think his story was that he himself felt like he was putting Band-Aids on, you know, as patients were coming into his lot, you know, into his work. He was working with patients, and he was dealing with, here's type 2 diabetes or problems related to type 2 diabetes. You know, people might think of a lot. This was shocking to me, and I did not know that the number one cause of non-accident amputations is type 2 diabetes. You know, imagine that was a public service announcement. You know, that's pretty. It gets your attention, I think. And so he was saying he got tired of amputating people's toes and telling them, you know, you should eat less and exercise more. You know, this is not effective for most people. And so he started actually, you know, and then he realized, well, wait a minute, maybe I should start with myself. And so he did, and he went from being an obese MD to being a healthy MD, and now he teaches healthy living along with, you know, of course, doing his medical practice. But Dr. Tro is an interesting guy, and he does the glucose monitor thing with some people. You know, some people don't want to do it; they're not always compliant, but I think feedback always helps, you know, and not just because I think one of the big problems people have is they only look at the scale, and then and Dr. Glenn talks about this idea too, the idea of, like, if you're a child learning to walk, you know, it's okay to fall down and you get back up and you keep going and you keep going. But us adults, we want to go straight. We think we should be heroically perfect or nothing, like all or nothing. And so does your app, do you find that that's something you think about with the way people use your app?
Well, there's some people, so particularly people, or maybe some foods are all, sometimes you can go for them. That's a bit kind of black or white thinking, which isn't. If you have games where you can go for the unhealthy foods, sometimes that's not really going to set up those unconscious associations, those really we kind of say to people, well, just because in the game it might be that you always have to inhibit when you see pizza or chocolate or alcohol or whatever it is, that doesn't mean in real life you always have to avoid those things. It's just trying to make it easier for you to limit your consumption or to choose when you have those things. So that's kind of why our app is set up in that way, that certain things are always kind of red and you have to inhibit them, and other things are always green.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let me circle back to Mark. And Mark, you're still with us. I can see you're on there. And This is so with what we've been talking about so far is can you tell us is there anything else you could share about the RESTRAIN app that maybe would be helpful for people to know?
Yeah, so this kind of training, brain training for healthy eating and weight loss, it's a very sort of novel approach. It hasn't really been tested outside the lab specifically. There's a lot of evidence, well, there's building evidence to say that it is effective, but these are lab-based studies. It's like we were talking about. When you test in a lab, the environment really influences what you eat. Like we said, you see the cues for your favorite food, you're more likely to eat it in the environment. But we do all this testing in a sterile environment. So we take all the sort of humanity out of it, let's say, and do these, experiments to establish cause and effects. But so these two apps, the RESTRAIN app and Food Tea, are taking this sort of research out of the lab and seeing, is this effective in the real world? Does this actually help people lose weight and to get healthier eating habits? So, we need as much data as possible to be able to answer these questions, really. So, these both Food Tea and RESTRAIN are the biggest attempts for this kind of study, ever made. So, yeah, we just really appreciate the help. If anyone wants to, help out with research and be part of it, help us to answer our questions. It's perfect. It would be brilliant. Download the app and give us a hand.
Excellent. Well, this has been fascinating. And time is flying by here. I know you guys have a busy day and a busy week ahead, so I want to wrap things up very soon. But as Mark and Natalia were saying, if anyone out there is interested in this kind of stuff, these are free apps that. But because they're free doesn't mean they're not useful, because there's so many free apps that are just designed to steal and mine our data and to sell advertisements to us. I mean, my son's always downloading game apps, and he's 5, okay, and he loves kids learn this stuff so young, and I think it's awesome to see that what you guys are doing. So hats off to you. Kudos, congratulations, and I will do everything I can to help you get the word out, because I think this is really valuable stuff. And if we think about the flip side of it, it just occurs to me that I actually did a minor in marketing in university, and enjoy reading that kind of the consumer psychology stuff to try to program against it a little bit. And the food industry has obviously proven that they can do it the other way. They can train people to go toward the unhealthy foods, and using all kinds of mechanisms that are, especially infuriating to me is to get the kids programmed early on to go for the Cocoa Crisp or whatever beautiful or funny cartoon character you can use, which the kids obviously pick up very young. And this is a whole other topic, so I don't want to go off on a tangent. But maybe this is something we can talk about at another time. So,
well, I mean, essentially, because sometimes people who use our apps say, oh, but if it's kind of working unconsciously, is it like brainwashing me? And some people feel a bit uncomfortable with that. We'll be like, well, you're being brainwashed every day. That's what adverts do. I mean, you're not aware of it because you don't think about it, but we are being constantly brainwashed by marketing.
Oh yeah, my God, that's the whole idea. Repetition and associating. Like imagine that if we were consulting on let's make a new advertisement for whatever fast food company or highly processed hedonic food. Like for my kids, I always go back to Doritos. Doritos are so established, you don't really need to advertise them. You just need to, they've been engineered. But I did think of one other question. There's a New York Times best-selling book that I don't think they got. Anyway, it's about.
Is it Michael Moss?
That's it. Michael Moss's book, and I think
Sugar fat,
Yeah.
sugar,
Have you
and salt or
guys
something.
looked at any of that?
Yeah, and he wrote an editorial recently after releasing his more recent book, and he mentioned our app because he got in touch and said, wow, what you're doing really fits with what the message I'm trying to get out there. And so,
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's a great connection to have. So wow, awesome. Yeah, it just occurred to me. So I'm glad that he saw that and heard about you guys. So well, you guys.
yeah, there's not that many tools out there that can kind of tackle this food addiction, like highly hedonic foods. So I think he was on the lookout for new research and new tools that people could try to use to like undo all of that conditioning and
Yeah.
brainwashing from
Yeah, or at least begin to like push back a little bit to give people
yeah.
some tools to because sometimes it seems like for some people it's just like they don't even imagine, they sort of think it's just normal that we're bombarded by all these plethora of unhealthy. It's like there's unhealthy and there's very unhealthy, and then there's, but where's the fruit and veggies, and where's the the protein sources and the healthy fats, not, and that kind of stuff that so anyway, well, I'm just really it's been really honored and happy to be able to talk about this with you guys. And any parting note, any parting message from you, Natalia?
Just to say, people shouldn't feel bad if they're struggling to resist certain foods, because we can't help the way our brains have been designed to respond to fat and sugar and salt. And we're kind of always fighting against our biology, and in our society, as we've just been discussing, it's made really hard for us. So no one should beat themselves up about it, and just try lots of different strategies and to, make it easier for yourself to eat more healthy foods, and maybe focus on health and nutrition rather than weight. I think we get really hung up on the scales, like you said, and actually it's just more important to be, to exercise and eat well and not worry about weight as much.
Yeah, good point. I always suggest to people that if you only look at the scale, which is like like a medieval, actually Roman Empire level technology, it doesn't tell you about body composition and lean tissue. I mean, we've got fluids, we've got organs, we've got all these different things inside this sack of bones that we are, right? And so muscle tissue. And so if you just want to do weight loss, well, just get your leg amputated. That's weight loss, okay? Instant weight loss, right? But if you look at, because when you get into, this is a whole nother tangent, but like when you get into fat metabolism with the body, you actually have the subcutaneous fats, and you have the visceral fat among the organs, which research suggests is metabolized first. So we don't always notice, people think there's so many unscrupulous vendors out there with all these, like localized fat loss things, this pill or this potion or this wrap and this detox, and there's just so much BS out there. And if you just, I think your advice is great. Just focus on the healthy eating and some regular exercise and getting enough sleep and turning off your devices at night. And that simple thing can make a huge difference over time, and being consistent with it. So thank you again, Natalia. And Mark, any parting words or thoughts from your side?
No, I think Natalia put it perfect, really. Everybody will struggle with weight or with eating at one point in their lives. We're in an environment which makes it very, very, very hard to keep to our goals in terms of healthy eating and weight loss. And don't beat yourself up over it. Don't focus on the scales. It's about trying, what works for you. Maybe dieting and fasting works perfectly for somebody, but doesn't mean that it's going to work perfectly for you. So we always say it's a weight loss journey. It's a journey that you go on for weight loss. So it isn't just I've decided that I'm going to lose weight therefore I'm going to lose weight. You know, it's a challenge. So
excellent. Well, Mark, Natalia, once again, big thank you, and I want to encourage everybody to check out the Food Tea app, Food Trainer app, and as well as the RESTRAIN app. You can Google those and find those online, and we're going to let these busy folks get back to work, and I will let you know when we get these. This will probably go online in December on our YouTube channel over at Vitality On, which you can find at vitalityon.com, and we've got the show, a big link to show. And so if you guys have the possibility of sharing the interview when we get it online, that would be highly appreciated, and it would be good. So once again, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day. Have a great week. Bye-bye now.